So I have two questions from that. The first, you already started mentioning. What are the main cities and regions that like foreigners that want to do business in India? And I'm guessing it depends on the type of industry, but if they want to be surrounded by other business owners, entrepreneurs, what are the cities or regions that you think a foreigner should go to?
Oh, so I think Mumbai and Delhi are the ones that stand out immediately. Delhi is the capital. You're the closest to the power. It's easiest to make deals. Mumbai is financial capital,
Okay.
and it's a port city, so that works out in all different directions. Bangalore is doing really great when it comes to tech and the new startup world. Hyderabad is another city that's great with tech and startups. And then you have traditional larger cities like Chennai, Calcutta, again, port cities that have just a tradition of some kind of business tradition because they were the centers of commerce for the British Empire.
Oh, I see.
So they're not as big as a Bombay or a Delhi, but they're big enough that they're still growing. I mean, Indian cities have populations into the millions.
Right.
10 million is not the largest city. 15 million, 20 million. We have cities of all sizes.
That's crazy.
So when you reach that kind of number, there's bound to be a significant population who are running business, who are trying stuff out.
Yeah.
So I remember I was reading a report last year. It talked about the fact that I think the equivalent of about 8 to 9 million small and medium enterprises in India.
Wow.
Which we're talking about like a corner store.
Yeah.
So entrepreneurship is pretty big. Now, whether you're talking about foreigners coming down, this is a funny thing I've seen where, sure, if you take a picture of, a financial street in Bombay or Mumbai, you may not see a lot of white faces. But
right.
That doesn't mean they're not there. It just means that there's so many people that there's a lower proportion. But there's a pretty thriving foreign community of businessmen in Bombay, in Delhi, in Bangalore, where I live. So I know that for a fact. And the VC community, again, is another great place to see, Chinese investors, Western investors, all hanging around. The industries to get into are probably tech. Tech is probably the one place where foreigners can walk in. Manufacturing, if you're willing to do deals with some of the Indian firms, obviously another great place to walk into. So I think there's a lot of opportunity because people want to interact with foreigners.
Right. Have you seen like an influx of foreigners over the last few years coming into India more for tech, for manufacturing? Now that they can, like 30 years ago, if you were doing business with India, maybe it was harder to come and visit and have a personal relationship. But have you seen that people are coming in, or it's just been going like that for a long time?
No, sure. So, okay. So I think maybe it's time for a little history lesson. I'll keep it short. So, so India in the early 90s opened up from a very socialist economy to a liberal economy,
right,
where we went from having one commercial airline, which is publicly owned, to having about 10 years ago. So, it's opened up a lot, obviously. In the last 25, 30 years, since 1991, 1992, it's become a lot easier to do business. It's become a lot easier to invest in businesses in India. Now, government policies change. You might, at current moment, certain policies make it hard to invest in India, but certain policies make it easy to set up manufacturing in India.
Makes sense.
So, for example, Apple is a great example of this because importing mobile phones into India has become more expensive in the last 5 years. But manufacturing phones has become cheaper. So Apple phones that are manufactured in India, like I think the iPhone 5 still has a manufacturing unit in India.
Right.
That's still doing well because Apple does a lot of reselling, right? A lot of buy the old model because people still get the prestige of owning an iPhone.
Yeah.
So those are doing well versus an iPhone 10, iPhone 11 maybe is not doing as well as it would do in Bangladesh or Sri Lanka or comparable closer markets.
Makes sense for sure. I just think personally from the outside, it seems like such an interesting market to get in that I'm surprised that more foreigners don't come in, which is one question that I wanted to ask you. So like, why don't you think there's not more people coming in and trying to do business there?
So,
especially from Europe and America.
So I think America actually has a lot.
You have, okay.
American, or at least American companies come down a lot. Maybe individuals may not come down a lot, but companies definitely come down a lot.
Okay.
And See, it's a hard one. Because we still have a lot of protectionist measures. We still have a lot of taxation to protect, local
Mhm.
industries, and a lot of taxation over money going out. But the one thing I think is tough to overcome. It's tough to overcome for us as well, sitting in India, is we are so heterogeneous as a country, as a population.
Right.
It's really, really hard to come and say, hey, I'm going to target, the 1.4 billion people living in India.
Yeah.
Me and my neighbor are completely different people. We would
Right.
not use the same companies, the same products, the same services.
Makes sense.
So, and I mean, the way I think about it is, think about London.
Yeah.
It's a big multicultural city, right? You've got internal immigrants, you've got Londoners from different parts. I mean, a Londoner from East London, a Londoner from West London are different people.
Completely.
And then you've got, Asian immigrants, you've got Caribbean immigrants, you've got European immigrants, and it's just a whole mix of stuff. So you walk in and say, hey, I'm going to target this 10 million people living in London or more. I don't know what the population is, but millions of people living in London. It's not viable. It doesn't make sense. You
Right.
can't target middle income Pole with high income Londoner. It just doesn't make sense. You got to figure out who you're going for. And India has a lot like that. We've got
Right.
so many different cultures, so many economic classes, so many social classes. To come in and say, hey, I'm going to deliver a product that goes for the mass is very, very hard.
Of course.